Hello and welcome back to Business with Go. Today we're going to be talking about the long-term impacts of expansion on a business. So let's head straight in. So when you're looking at the long-term impacts of expansion on a business, you have to look at a couple of key things. So these are the ownership structure, the product mix, the profitability, the employment, and all those kind of things you have here within them. So let's get started with number one. Organizational structure. So this kind of functional organizational structure kind of might be replaced by a geographic structure if it's to facilitate the expansion into new geographic regions. So this could be internally within the country and of course also externally into global things. Although global sometimes is a bit more complicated. Sometimes you might just go, you might have a parent organization, you might split out into a small business. You've got all these kind of things when it complicates things when it comes to global. But this kind of thing where it's like, we're trying to new locations, so this geographic structure. But what happens when you're not expanding your geographic structure, you're just expanding your product range? So let's say, coming out with a new video series on this thing, input video idea here, that kind of thing there. And it's like, okay, well, that's different. That's not the same sort of thing you have there. Well, that's the thing. You're expanding your product range. And that might be that's generally not necessarily one product. It might be one product, but generally it's a lot of products, or basically it ranges from having just one new product. Maybe that's this thing. And when I say one new product, that could be if it's just a sort of a basic one new product, or it could be a completely different product type. To loads of product types. That's the kind of thing you have there when expansion comes in there, and that's how it comes when you look at organizational structure. Now, there's also the product mix. You see, when you have a merger or acquisition, it will allow the business to satisfy the various niche markets if the owners choose the right business to partner up with or take over. Now, this may lead to development of a wider product range, because if you're looking at something like this, a business will oftentimes fall into the trap of being like, either if they're a niche business, they'll have the risk of customers being like, yeah, I want to go with you. I want to get your specific product, and your specific product is better value, but because of your costs, you're not actually the better option. You're better value, but you're not the better option. And that's the kind of thing you have there, where then you see a complicated niche market, and obviously if it's a different market, it's like, I want to go with you, the big market, but see, I need a specific product, so you're not really good enough, I mean, you've got a wide product range, I agree with you there, but just not very specific. Obviously, it's hard to be specific, That's why a lot of specific, unless you're like a bit, and then the business can obviously turn into the business, which is like, it's not just one niche market, it's, you make everything. You want a specific product, we'll cover the market. The market's big enough, and that's because if that business is able to take over niche markets, if it takes over enough of them, it's literally going like this. We have control over this entire market. There's niche markets, there's all these things, and some of this is good because it's like, you've got the resources of this large business, which means like costs can come down because they're putting the cost is going to be roughly the same because you're producing the same product, but you're also getting all the benefits of, all the things where it's like, it's still niche though. It's not just a specific niche thing. But of course, that also has a negative attitude for consumers where it's like, that's still kind of a monopoly. But this is a large business. You may go like, I don't really want to. It's better for my pocket because, there either are no other businesses, or they cause other businesses to have to put the prices up because they don't have enough customers. So this kind of becomes a problem where like, you don't want it to become just a monopoly, or not necessarily a monopoly, but just like all powerful companies, all massive companies just being like, you want to buy the product? Buy from us, not from the little guy. Of course, that kind of becomes more complicated than that. It's like, that's not good. But when it comes to business, that's good because it means they get more money. But you also have profitability. You see, in the short term, profitability tends to be lower. But when you look at the long term, economies of scale can be achieved through this, through expansion, through bulk buying and increased market power. Automation, through automation. Of course, once again, this is also, I talk about, these are things. This kind of automation problem, of course, would be like, well, that's all good for business, because it's like, we don't have to pay as much for employment. I mean, that's because we shocked them all. It turns out once you achieve a certain level of profitability, you're able to invest some money into just machines, and those machines actually are able to do quite a lot of jobs of human beings, and they're far cheaper. Problem with that, of course, is that employees then get fired. That's not necessarily good, because then you can start to make a lot of unemployment there. And there's also the elimination of duplication, leading to, technically greater efficiency and greater probability of expansion as the business is larger. But of course, this is just for the business; it's a benefit. But for people working within the business and for people outside, long-term impacts cannot be so good when a business expands. But you also have long-term when it comes to employment. So when you look at employment, training development opportunities can open up. Promotion possibilities for staff can also open up, and this can possibly improve morale and relations. Bigger businesses are able to attract higher qualified personnel. Because if I'm running a small business, and I say to you, would you like to come work for me? I can't really pay that much because I do not make that much profits. You go, no, I don't want to. I could set up my own business technically, and I could pay you to do the job you're doing. And I actually have more things there. I've got more, all these sort of things, more qualifications, everything. But if you have a business owner, they're not qualified. They may not even be doing anything. But here's the thing: they are the owner of a large business. And instead of the person going, would you like to work for me? I'm a small type of business. You have more qualifications than I do. But it's like, no. But if it's a big business, it's like, well, you may have more qualifications than I do, but our business holds quite a lot of markets, and if you were to come in here, you'd be able to get more pay, and you'd also be able to get access to customers, because here's the thing: doesn't really matter if you're highly skilled in an area, we control that market. So beforehand, obviously, we had employees that weren't as skilled, but now we control that market. So here's the thing: you're not going to get customers if you don't go with us, or you won't get as many customers. That's one thing here. You can go to us and you get better customers and all these sort of things. But there's actually another problem here, because employees might become alienated from the business and demoted in a large business. This leads to inefficiencies, because you've got all this problem, like, do you really want to be working a 9-to-5 job where there's no real possibility of living the life you want to? And it's like, well, work you're putting in, it's like, I really hate this, and it's like I'm just living for the end of the day. You're just kind of wishing your life away, and that's a problem. That's kind of psychology you're going to have in all your employees. It's like, well, it's not very nice. It's not nice to cause that. To cause that in human beings. Like, business owner, how do you like the fact that thousands of people are miserable every single day because of you and your horrible workplace environment? It's not that horrible. It's a massive workplace environment that, it feels kind of like, horrible. But it's not horrible in the sense of like you don't do necessarily horrible things, although there are businesses that obviously do horrible things to their employees. But even without that can be a miserable workplace environment. And there's all that sort of avenue reports where it's like, well, there's all these issues with larger businesses that come along the place. But that's the thing. A lot of the time, the long-term impacts of a large business can actually be quite negative ones for the general population. For the consumer, here's the thing. The consumer might say, oh, that's great. I get this product for less than I would have originally got it. But because the business now has increased profit, you go, hold on a second. You, the consumer, have been able to get this for cheaper than you ever could have. But the question will be, At what cost? Because those employees that are taking advantage of, those economies of scale that that business is benefiting from. But hold on a second, why does that business just drop the price further? Because originally, let's say they took a 10% cut. Let's say they added 10%. Now they've achieved economies of scale and they brought the cost down. But now they're taking 20%. Now, obviously, the price is still less for you, but now they've doubled their profits per unit. And that's the kind of thing I have here where it's like, well, you know, there are a lot of companies that reach like $1 billion valuations, billions are made. And thinking, well, hold on a second there. You can't go like, we have affordable products. Do we have a lot of profit? Yes, we do. So that could mean very easily we have millions and actually billions made every single year. So we actually could drop the prices by quite a significant bit. Or we could use some of those profits and pay our employees more in a better wage. And there's all these kind of things we could do. But we're not going to do that. And that's one of the long-term impacts of a large business. Can be negative for the consumer in some ways, negative for employees, all these kind of things. But of course, generally, they're quite good for the business itself. But what about when you look at the importance of expansion? Not necessarily the benefits, not necessarily the direct negative things, but the importance of it. You know, these aren't necessarily trade-offs. It's not necessarily, oh, this is a good thing that they're doing this. It's like, well, what about the actual good things? What about the things that happen here? You know, what about the benefits they might have? You know, what about all these things, you know? And there are a couple. And those are the ones we'll be talking about in the next video. Please join us then. If not, you can view other videos, and you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'd be absolutely amazing. And, well, if you don't want to view other videos, both now and in the future, I'll just do this. Bye-bye for everything. And I hope you will enjoy the rest of your existence.